Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today guys, we're going to be going over 10 tips and tricks to solo holding any site, just like the pros. And this is one of those guides where I actually do like pretty much everything in this video. So I'm actually pretty happy with the points I'm going to get across to you because you see it in what I do and how I play. And I talk about this a lot in my streams. So I'm glad to finally get around to making a video on this. And with that being said, thank you for all the support on the VOD reviews lately. If you guys like the VODs and you like the reviews, I would highly recommend you come and swing by my stream. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dragonmar. VOD reviews every single day. So hope to see some of you guys there because I do it live as well as for videos. But without any further ado, let's jump into the video. Starting things off with tip number 1, and that tip is to have patience. Now, patience really is key when it comes to solo holding sites, and the reason for that is because if you get over aggressive when you're solo holding, you very often will die. And not only will you die, you'll die without the possibility for a trade. Remember, you're playing alone, and not only will you die without the possibility of a trade, but you'll also open up the site for free. So it's very important for everyone who finds themselves solo holding sites or just playing alone a lot to remember that your life is incredibly valuable, both in and out of the game. But in general, it's really important when you're on defense to be extremely careful with the type of peaks you go for. And for that reason, the first tip is probably the most important, and that is to be patient, to allow the enemies to come to you, to be aggressive when the opportunity presents itself, but you have to be very careful with how you do that, because being patient really is the name of the game when it comes to solo holding. Now, tip number 2 is about teamwork, and that is to call for rotations early and clearly. It's really important when you're soloing a site to not try to do it all. And I don't know if some people have egos or why they don't ask for help, but it's extremely important that when you are soloing, you understand when you actually need people to come help you. And this is one of those things that I think gets lost a lot in games, is people think they can kind of do it all. You can't, and you're not going to. And all you need sometimes is one player to rotate. Maybe, if you're playing on Haven, for example, a lot of the times you'll have 2 guys towards B. Just have that A-link player come swing by, cover your short or something. Make sure no one comes up from there. There is no shame in that. It's super important to make sure that when you're solo holding, you call for the help when you need it. Because what happens a lot, and what I find, is people will solo hold a site. They'll like spot, they'll hear like 4 people running, they won't say anything, and they'll die, and then suddenly the enemy is on site, and the only knowledge we had of that is because they're dead. That's no good. You have to make callouts, and the main call you're gonna be making is to call for rotations. Tip number 3 is to not repeak the same angle over and over, or to not get aggressive in the same spot over and over. Now, in the last VOD review, you probably heard me talk about this, but I tend to push sewer on Haven a lot over on A site, and I mean a lot, like every round. And it gets me killed a lot. And this is part of my problem, is I repeak the same spots way too often. I can be too predictable sometimes. And that's something I'm honestly trying to fix as well. So I hope you guys know that. I'm not perfect. Anyways, so not repeaking the same angle is really big here. And what you want to do is whenever you're playing solo and you are getting a little bit aggressive, we talked about there are times for it. Of course, patience is key, but there are times when you do want to go for those opening picks, or at least to get info. And you want to make sure you're not going to the same spots every round. Now, repeaking is also about when you're taking fights too. Remember, when you're solo holding, there's a good chance you're in a 3v1, maybe even a 4v1 sometimes, but possibly 5v1, right? And the problem here is if, for example, I'm playing on Bind, and I'm playing over in U-Haul, and I peek that short push from U-Haul, and I take some shots and fall back, if I repeak that angle, there is a very high chance that at least 2 enemies are going to be looking at me. That's a big no-no. That's not the fight you want to take. In that situation, you have to relocate and then peek from a different spot. So it's really important to understand when repeaking is going to get you killed, and then to appropriately assess that situation and then relocate based on that information. I can tell you that 9 out of 10 times you go for that repeak against 2 or 3 players, they're gonna kill you. If not, at least they're gonna trade you out. And either way, that's bad for you. Now, tip number 4 is sort of branching off of patience, but that's about playing passive. So passive plays win games. And this really is all about solo holding, because when you're playing solo, when you're playing alone, you don't have anyone else to rely on. You have to do everything yourself. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be the hero. You can fall off site, you know, save for next round. You can also retake. That's a big thing with solo holding. But the one thing you can't afford to do is die early. Now, to avoid this, you have to play passive. I'm not saying you have to play passive every round. I know that's not some people's play style, but overall, it does help a lot. This is something that I've been teaching myself, and part of the reason I keep getting, ranking up to immortal is because I focus a lot more on passive plays when I get in the high ranks. And the reason for that is you're going to lose a lot of these aim duels. But if you play smart and you play passive, and by the way, playing passive, very smart, you can win a lot more of these fights by using your brain and your aim. When you go for those crazy peaks, these duels right off the round start, you're really looking at 50-50 odds most of these times. That's not good enough, not when you're solo holding. When you're solo holding, and remember, on defense in general, getting a pick on offense, so if the attackers kill you and you kill them, that trade is still worth it for the attackers because they are taking site control. So you have to remember, your life is way more valuable than that one kill you might be getting. That's why I say to play passive. Tip number 5 sort of touches on a little bit of that passive play and a little bit of that aggression. And this is all about getting information early. Now, one of the biggest ways, and one of the most common ways that I see players lose when they're solo holding a site is to rushes, right? It's sort of the one strat that really counters that solo player, depending on how they play. Now, the wrong way to defend against a rush is to obviously swing out, peek them all, and you die, right? Even if they have classics, you're still losing that fight. However, if you can get information early on in the round, you sometimes can call for rotations quick enough and relocate, activate traps, smokes, whatever you have. You might be able to save that site and actually even play on it still without, completely relocating off of site and going for a retake. To do this, you need information. Use cameras, use Sova arrows, jump peek corners, things like that. There's a lot of different ways to get information, but just remember, if you find that you are losing sites quite often, and for example, it feels like the enemy team is like doing professional executes, a lot of the times the reason for that is you're not denying map sort of map positioning, and you're not taking away that map control. So what's happening is they're walking right up to your site, right up to that line you're holding, then they're executing, and it feels like in the blink of an eye they're on site. The reason for that is because you're not getting enough information early on in the round to figure out, hey, there might be people here. It's very easy for them to walk all the way up into your site and you not even know it if you're not peeking. So it's super important that even though I say to play passive, you also look for opportunities to gain information, whether that be through your own utility or through your teammates. Now, tip number 6 is to play agents that have some very nice sort of stall or just in general very solo-esque abilities. And those agents are in order, I would say, Cypher, Killjoy, Brim, and Omen. These are the 4 agents that I have found to be superb for holding on defense. Now, these aren't necessarily the best agents for you. Actually, these are probably, in terms of me, obviously Brim and Omen, but Cypher, very good for me as well. But the reason I like these guys is because Cypher and Killjoy have that ability to defend without ever having to peek a corner. Cypher with his camera and Killjoy with her turret. I mean, you're talking about you want to defend and stay safe. Just throw the turret down, let the turret spot players for you, or use Cypher's camera. It's so perfect how they work like that. And then you've got Brim and Omen, and you guys can guess why I put them there. Obviously, it's for their smokes. Now, this doesn't mean you have to play these agents, but if you are looking for the best agents to play for solo holding sites, maybe you play in a stack and your team likes to leave you solo, these are your best bets. And you obviously could throw maybe Viper in there as well. And there's definitely cases to be made for other agents, but these guys just make it so simple to solo hold. So I highly recommend you give it a shot with each of them. Cypher, obviously, for his trips, for his cages, which are, by the way, like smokes, and then for his camera. Killjoy has her turret and her mollies, and then Brim and Omen obviously have their smokes. Tip number 7 is for all my aggressive players out there to understand the value in getting an early kill. It's really important that if you do get that opening frag, that you then fall off from that play and you fall off from that rush into safety. One of the biggest mistakes that players make who are solo holding sites is they get that first kill and then they immediately repeek. They go for the second, they go for the third, if it might be the third, and that's the big problem, is sort of the gluttony of getting kills, the overemphasis on increasing their ranking on the leaderboard, on the scoreboard, boosting those stats of getting as many kills as they can instead of just playing for a win. And that's a big problem here, is that whenever you're solo holding, you get that opening kill. Well, guess what? Now the enemy team is denied vision, they're denied a player, but on top of that, they're down numbers, and then on top of that, they don't have that map control anymore. They got one less player to help take that part of the map. They're most likely going to fall off your bomb site, and you've pretty much successfully held off against an attack if they were going to execute your site. Not many teams are going to see a player die and then continue pushing down after that death. And even if they do, remember, you've now repositioned to safety. So now you are still at an advantage. But regardless, the point here that I'm making is that get that first kill if you have to, or if you do, and then immediately fall back and sort of play that passive role that I was talking about. Tip number 8. I talk about this a lot, and that is to get a bit unpredictable in your play. Remember, it's really important to switch up your spots on site from round to round, especially if the enemy team has shown interest in attacking you. So, for example, think about a site on bind, right? You guys know I love playing U-Haul. However, I also like playing on site now as well, because I realize that by playing U-Haul every round, I am way too predictable. Now, I'm not really ever solo holding A, but it does happen sometimes. And if I am solo holding, I love playing behind site box or in that little cubby under heaven, because this allows me to stay relatively safe from a shower push while also still watching that short push, and then I use my smokes to, delay, to allow for rotations and things like that. So it's really important that whatever site you're playing on, whatever map with whatever agent, you're not always in the same spot. You have to switch it up. For example, if you're solo holding a site on, let's say, Split, and you're constantly playing in hell, right? So that's under rafters in that corner. Well, eventually the enemy team's just going to molly you out of there, and they're going to get a free site take. You want to avoid that. Switch it up from round to round. Maybe run around, play hell, then play elbow, then play site, then play rafters. You know what I mean? Or play screens. There's so many options on every site of where to play. Try not to stay in the same spot round after round after round, because eventually, you play the right team, they're just going to ult you, and they're just going to kill you in that spot because they know you're there. They're not even going to go for info. They're just going to shoot you with like a rocket or a brimble. You have to switch it up. Tip number 9 is a doozy. This is a big one, and this is something that I have tried to teach people in a lot of the VODs I review, and it's all about taking one fight at a time. And this means that when you engage in that duel, that 1v1, you take the peek, you swing the corner, whatever it is, you're only exposing yourself to one possible angle. When you are solo holding, you cannot afford to be getting shot from multiple spots. There are not many of us who are good enough to be able to get one kill on, let's say, short A, and then immediately flick over to shower to kill the other person who is shooting at us, right? You never want to take those fights. So it's really important to understand these bomb sites in and out. And I mean that. Your map knowledge needs to be superb if you solo hold a lot. Study the maps, study the bomb sites, because when you take these fights, only expose yourself to one angle. Do not wide peek if it's going to, bring on additional pressure from another position. When you, for example, let's say you're going to go take hookah control, right? You get in a hookah and you're attacking B on bind. Well, don't run to the center of the window so that all of sight and CT and cubby and elbow can see you. Stay back, play CT, molly out cubby, then swing over to sight. It's really important to understand where you're peeking. And by the way, that was a retake since we're talking about defense. But the point still stands, is that you need to be very careful about how you peek and how you engage in fights, because a lot of the times when you're solo holding, players, our enemy teams are going to split the execute. They're going to, send 2 here, 3 there, and then they're going to converge on you. So it's really important that when you take these fights, you take them one by one. That is why you see pros clutch, because they take fights one by one, they get 1 kill, they take another fight, they get that kill, and it's a one-on-one fight every time. You're going to lose those 2v1s, more often than not. So try to avoid that the best you can. Tip number 10 is for all my non-smoking homies out there. Listen up, guys. You can ask for smokes, okay? Whether it be from Brimstone, whether it be from Omen, preferably Omen because he can do it from so far away, or even Jet, right? You could ask for smokes. And it's really important you do this if you're solo holding with an agent that does not have smokes. The reason is not just to deny vision. That's not it. It's actually also mind games. The enemy team has no idea where those players are necessarily playing, depending on, where you're at in that round, right? If it's the beginning of the round, you ask for a smoke, there's a good chance that they think you're doubling up on that site. Why would the Omen smoke off, a site he's not on? They may ask themselves, inquisitively, right? Well, the point is they don't know. That misinformation, that uncertainty may force them to take that fight differently or take your site differently if they think there's two players there. They might be overly cautious. They might make a mistake by not correctly, clearing a certain angle because they're too worried about the other player who doesn't exist. That's why it's actually important. And this just goes for everyone in general. It's not just about asking for smokes. It's about asking for help and other utility, yada, 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 whatever, maybe flashes. Just because you're solo holding doesn't mean your team still can't provide you with some assistance. Now, obviously, smokes are the most easy one, but you could ask for like Brim ults, an Omen teleport behind enemy lines. Things of that nature can definitely be called for, and you shouldn't feel any shame in asking for it. When you're solo holding something, you are using very few resources to control that site, so they may have the players on the other side of the map, so take some of their utility. I think that's a fair trade. But, guys, with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something new. Obviously, I try to give tips that I use in my games and I show in my gameplay. All of these things are definitely going to help you solo hold a bit better. And when you combine them all, I think that really does make you sort of that complete player who has a much deeper understanding of how to defend these sites when you're just playing by yourself. And guys, if you did learn something, please remember to hit that like button and obviously subscribe for more if you do enjoy this content. I'm trying to make around 3 new videos a week, as well as my 3 live streams. So, I'll see you guys soon. Have a great day. Take it easy, and peace.